We are a whopping 5 days away from electing a new president, or, it might take a little longer to count up those votes, but 5 days, 5 glorious, long, overdrawn, annoying days. So right now, it's really looking like Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. The election is only going to be decided in Pennsylvania. My current prediction is Donald Trump will comfortably win Arizona and Georgia, possibly North Carolina as well, only because he won it in 2020. And I also predict that Kamala Harris will maybe barely win Wisconsin and Michigan soundly, and that brings up Pennsylvania as the final decider of the election. We're having a 2000s type of moment, and for today's video, I kind of wanted to bring up, in the year 2000, back when Florida was the swingiest of all swing states. I know that's not the case anymore. The election was so close in Florida. Originally, it appeared that George Bush, I think, had won it, but the votes were just too close to count, so they picked certain counties to recount the votes, and then it seemed that, Al Gore won, and then it seemed Bush won, and then so they were going back and forth recounting these votes and whatnot. So eventually, the details don't really matter, who won how many votes and, the recount. But what happened was that the Supreme Court eventually stepped in and, they said, you can't just keep recounting certain counties because that breaks the idea that, you're favoring one vote over another, which I personally disagree with. I think we should have the most accurate votes no matter what. And if that means recounting certain counties, so be it. That's besides my point. I'll leave my election or my opinion away from this video. But yeah, and so Bush took it to the Supreme Court saying they got to stop recounting, and the Supreme Court sided with Bush, ultimately saying, the votes that were counted at the time, right before, would be final, said and done. And at the time, that Bush was up. So therefore, Bush won Florida, and therefore he won the election. And what's interesting is a lot of people know, how the Supreme Court decided that, and how Bush snuck away with winning the election. But what people don't realize is, do you guys know who the attorney was for Bush representing and arguing in front of the Supreme Court? That was the man named John Roberts. And as a reward, in my opinion, John Roberts was elevated to Chief Justice of the United States under Bush. And now here we are again. Very, very close election. Pennsylvania is shaping up to, essentially, if you win Pennsylvania, you are more than likely going to win the election, because there's data that shows that swing voters in swing states all tend to line up the same way in most cases. Don't quote me on that, because that's going to bite me in the ass maybe. But, let's say something happens in Pennsylvania like this. I could foresee a future where Trump asks the very conservative Supreme Court to step in, and the Supreme Court will decide the election. The same man who argued in front of the Supreme Court in Bush versus Gore is going to be leading a panel of justices who are going to do the exact same thing. We already have evidence. The Supreme Court has dipped their toes in very swiftly in Virginia. The governor, I believe, Glenn Youngkin, who's a Republican, something about 1,600 ballots were denied by him and, his administration or the legislator or whatever, the state government, because they were found, according to them, to be fake or illegal non-citizen votes. Those people allegedly passed the test, passed everything required to vote, but they were non-citizens, and therefore they were terminated. Those 1,600, 2,000-ish votes were terminated. The Supreme Court stepped in and reaffirmed Virginia's ability to do that, to push away those votes. And on top of that, in Pennsylvania already, the judicial system is coming into play, where you have things like Bucks County, which is a very battleground county in Pennsylvania, which are allowing early voting to be extended in terms of in-person absentee ballot voting, which allows people to vote without state IDs and things of that nature. That's what I did here in Ohio because I do not have an Ohio State issue ID. I'm originally from Chicago, so. But besides all the technical details, this just tells you that the Supreme Court is very, very, they're keeping a keen eye on this. And, you know, don't be surprised when, Trump is already challenging some of these things. And, you know, some, unlike 2020, the courts are actually listening. Why? Because the courts are conservative. They've only been getting more conservative. And this election, I would say, is more contested than 2020 and 2016. It is shaping up to be even closer, maybe, than the year 2000. So, I know I made a video about, Muslims potentially deciding the election. But I foresee a future where even Kamala Harris's team, um, you know, maybe begins a suit. More than likely, though, obviously, I would expect Trump and his team to push that suit forward because they know the Supreme Court, um, is on their side wholeheartedly. So it would go down in the history books for generations and generations to come. This man, Chief Justice John Roberts, argued in front of the Supreme Court about Bush versus Gore on why Bush should win the election, and as a result, he became the Chief Justice. And now the same exact issue is going to be presented right in front of his door. And he has the safe 6-3 conservative majority to do whatever the hell he wants. Meaning, this could be stretched. You don't need to prove a lot of things. And, I don't want to think about it because I hope it doesn't happen. But if it comes to the point where Trump stretches his scope of Supreme Court favorability too much, you might see some unrest and some unconstitutional and unpresidential things come into play. But yeah, no one's talking about that from I know, but just kind of looming over my head. With that being said, I hope you enjoy your day. Please stay civil. We're all Americans, and I hope I'll see you tomorrow.